Hello, and welcome to the Viva Connections SharePoint Framework Biweekly Sync. It is July 28th, 2022. I'm your host on this call, Patrick Rodgers. Back with another great call for you here in our summer series of calls. We've got our patterns and practices updates across the program, new community samples overviews, picture time in together mode, and we've got two great demos, one by some guy named Patrick Rodgers, who I'm excited to see, and also Paolo will be showing us how to create custom list forms with SPFx. So really excited to see that great new capability in SPFx 1.15. So excited to see a demo of that and how all that works from Paolo. So next up, opportunities to participate. We often get asked, how can I be more involved in the P&P program? So the best way I love for people to get involved is to demo your work. I know you're doing great work for your companies and your customers. Would love to have you on the call to demo it. Just double check it's appropriate for you to demo what you might be working on. Not every company loves that, but most do, and would love to have your work demoed on this call. That can be anything around SharePoint framework development, specifically for this call, client-side development, anything around any of the P&P suite of things, and any combination of those things is great. So the link down there in the bottom right corner, aka.ms/m365pnp/request/demo, will get you to a form where you can request a demo spot. We'll get you booked just as soon as we can. Sometimes we are a little bit booked out for a few months. So don't be dismayed if you don't get booked immediately. We will get you booked. We will get you on a call. And thank you so much for your interest in demoing on these calls. As well, you can always contribute on GitHub. So that's reporting issues, submitting pull requests, and also helping others with their issues and questions is a great way to get involved and talk to folks, help folks out. And it really helps, when some of the key maintainers for certain libraries can't necessarily get to a question immediately. If you happen to know the answer, it really helps folks get going a little bit faster. And then as always, we welcome your feedback about everything we do in P&P. So how are these calls? How is our documentation? Where else can we help? And of course, positive feedback is okay too. If you like something we're doing, perhaps we can do a little bit more of it. Next up is our, as I call it, the Page-O links. So lots and lots of links here. The only link you really need to remember is that one all the way on the right, aka.ms/m365/community. That's going to get you to all our developer videos. Those are topic-focused videos to help you learn how to do certain things. So maybe get started with SPFX, get started calling Microsoft Graph, get started with certain authentication schemes, all sorts of great videos there. Great way to catch up on just your learning, and maybe you've got a project and you've got to try something new. Great way to get a little bit of an intro on those topics, of course, in those developer videos. Then we've got our community videos. That's going to be the recordings of this call, or other Thursday calls, the Tuesday calls, and all of our other community calls. So if you miss an episode or just want to review something you saw on an older episode, all of these calls are available on the YouTube channel, typically about 24 hours after the call itself happens. And then as well, we've got a bunch of open source repositories here at github.com. So P&P, Office Dev, Microsoft Graph, and SharePoint, as well as OneDrive. We need to remember to update this slide. I keep forgetting. But so all those organizations welcome your contributions, welcome your input, and have tons of great resources for you. Samples, documentation, sample projects, all sorts of great stuff. So tons and tons and tons of great stuff. And then as well, we have a bunch of sample galleries. The best way to look at the samples is ak.ms/m365/samples. That is the new unified sample gallery. Allows you to search and filter and find exactly the samples you've been looking for. And it sort of aggregates all of the samples up from these various other sample galleries and repositories. So instead of having to kind of go hunt around across lots of locations, you can use that unified sample gallery to find stuff a little more quickly. Great work by everybody involved there. And just a reminder, ak.ms/m365/community will get you the P&P Patterns and Practices landing page that gets you links back out to all this content. So just remember that one link, and it'll get you back to everything else. We have a bunch of other community calls. Our Tuesday call, that's the M365 platform call, is on summer break until the 31st of August. And then we've got other calls about adaptive cards, identity platform, Office add-ins, Power Platform. And then the bottom two are the alternating Thursday calls. So the bottom one is this call, and the one immediately above that is the opposite Thursday call. So links to all of those, and then again, ak.ms/m365/calls will get you links to all of our calls. And again, all of these are recorded. Not everybody can attend every call all the time. Totally understand that. That's expected, but you can always catch up if you want on YouTube if you happen to miss a call. And then with that, I'll hand things over to David for Sharing is Caring.
Awesome. Thank you, Patrick. Well, friends, as Patrick mentioned, Sharing is Caring is a program that is here to provide you hands-on guidance. We would love to get you more involved in the community, and you may want to, but you may be a little unsure of some of the areas of contribution, like creating a pull request in GitHub. What is a pull request in GitHub? Well, we are here to provide you that hands-on guidance in a safe space opportunity. These are not recorded. They are live. We will work together with you and other members of the community to provide you assistance and guidance on a variety of topics. We've got August dates coming up for the Power Platform Sample Contributor and Writing for the Web. And of course, Hugo is excited. He's powering up. See what I did there? A Power Pages 2-part Sharing is Caring session. So we're excited for that new one as well. You can sign up for any of the sessions, aka.ms/Sharing is Caring. Then, once you do contribute, we want to celebrate all the amazing work that you're doing. And we have a recognition program to do just that. This is a formal and official program powered by Credly. Yes, the same Credly that creates those badges that you get when you get certified. They will sit right alongside those certification badges. You can associate them to LinkedIn, share them on Twitter, put them on the fridge, give it to mom, get a hug from her. We are all proud of the amazing work that you're doing in the community, and we want to officially and formally recognize you. And you can do that. There is no cost. aka.ms/M365PNP-recognition. You've been seeing them shared on Twitter, and we want to make sure that you're recognized. So be sure to sign up. Only to do it once, not once per month or once per year, just once, and we'll take care of you. If you have any questions, don't hesitate to reach out to myself or Hugo Bernier, and we'll get you set up. Patrick, back to you.
Thanks for that, David. Love to see the growth in this recognition program as well as the Sharing is Caring work, but great to see everybody on Twitter posting their what do you call these, recognition awards or badges, and love seeing that. So great work there. And with that, we will go over to Julie for PNPJS library updates.
Yes, we will. We have another new version coming out like we do every month. So version 3.6 to be released August 12th. We will have a bunch of documentation updates. We are forever trying to improve them and increase their understandability. So we will obviously be continuing to do that. Hopefully this will be the time that I get all that support and graft out for lists, content types, and columns. That is quite a large undertaking, a little bigger than I had expected, so it's taking longer than I had wanted. So that hopefully is coming out in that next release. We will have an update for the URL encoding that has sort of been an issue here or there. So we're going to have a more streamlined way that we will do the URL encoding. So hopefully we will no longer have issues with special characters in URLs parameters. And then we have added graph support for special folders. So that is in already. So if you want to check that out, you can try our nightly release. So we do nightly builds every night, and you can install that in your project using the @v3nightly attribute on the end of the install, and check out that special folder support already. If you have feedback on that, obviously you can submit that to our issues list in our GitHub repo. And then don't forget to follow us, M365PNPJS, on Twitter. And that is all I have for today. Thanks, Patrick.
Thanks, Julie. Great updates there. I'll just add the next release will have the beta 3 for cancelable, so you can cancel your requests. A lot of work there, and as well some fixes for just some async timing issues. So there's a couple of paths that get you an uncaught rejection in Node, and I'm sure the browser too. So working to close those gaps. We'll have that, I believe, in the next release. So next up is going to be a CLI for Microsoft 365, new version 5.5 with a bunch of great stuff like removing Teams client cache, extending managing SharePoint groups, role definitions, custom actions, some search external connections, managing planners, and restoring Office 365 groups, and more. Oh, Gary's on the call. Gary, did you want to speak to this?
Take it away. You did such a great job. But no, I can do. Yeah, so basically, as Patrick's saying, we've got to the end of the month. It's our regular release for the next version of CLI. So it's version 5.5. It was actually released about an hour ago, just before this session. So in this release, lots of new commands, enhancements covering Planner, SharePoint, Microsoft Search, Office 365 groups, and Teams as well. and also all the general improvements and bug fixes. And this is a roll-up of all the beta releases that we've done throughout the month. One fix that's been provided now is I've seen a few people have issues with logging into their tenants with the CLI when they've got passwords with special characters. So we had a fix already in the beta version. That's now into the latest version. So you shouldn't have any issues logging into your tenants now. Provided links in the chat. So there's link to the release announcement. There's many more kind of features and updates that we can't get on this slide. So do check that out, and you'll find some examples as well as how to use these new commands and new features. If you want to get the latest version, so you can pop along to npm and use the @latest tag. If you want to use Docker and run the CLI in a container, you can also do that as well. Again, use the latest tag to get the latest version of the CLI. Keep up with the latest announcements, so please follow us on Twitter @CLI Microsoft 365. If you're talking about us on socials, please use the hashtag CLI Microsoft 365. We'd love to hear what you're talking about and maybe what you're sharing. And also, if you've got feedback, please come along to the GitHub repository, raise an issue, start a discussion, and we'd love to start that conversation with you. And finally, thank you all to all our contributors this month. Without you, it wouldn't be possible to have this release. So thank you very much. And that's it. Back to you.
Great. Thanks, Gary, for those updates. And apologies for not realizing you were on the call right away. So sorry about that. But wonderful updates. Love to see the CLI continue to grow. And we're going to now move over to the reusable SPFx controls. So these are a set of React controls. There's two different libraries. The React controls are at 3.9, and it's got some new controls in there. And these are the controls designed to be used in the body of your web parts and application customizers in SPFx. And so it's got lots of great controls. They're all styled to look like they're SharePoint native. Great way to save yourself some time and build out a wonderful solution using a composition of these controls versus building from scratch every time. As well, we've got the React property controls. Those are at 3.8, and those are the controls designed to be used in the edit pane of your SharePoint framework web part. Again, saving you tons of time to get a nice out-of-the-box styled thing there. So encourage you to check those out. Release notes for both are available at the links there on the slides, or David's already got it into the chat as always. Special thanks to all of the contributors for the reusable controls. Very much appreciate all the work there. Love to continue to see these expand and grow. So great work. And if you haven't checked them out, certainly do. If you're doing SharePoint Framework, it's a great way to save yourself just a ton of time having to just design all this yourself. So it's fantastic work there. And with that, we'll go to Modern Search and then ak.ms/pnp search for all the latest updates and things like that. So 4.7 was the June release. You can see the 4.7 release information there at that link. And thank you to all the folks that contributed to this. So if you're not familiar, the PNP search, Modern Search Web Parts is a great way to build up a search portal or a search experience for your customers or your companies, and that will help you, again, save time and effort. And there was a demo about these, I want to say 2 weeks ago or maybe 4 weeks ago, where we got to see all the great power you can have for formatting and customizing the search results and really making things beautiful for your customers. So definitely encourage you to check these out and go back and check out those demos to see a little bit more detail on this. As well, there is the V3 branch. That's not really being maintained anymore. Encourage you, when you get a chance, to please move to the V4 branch. You can see we haven't really had updates since December of 2021 there. So encourage you as well to check out the Modern Search stuff. Really exciting that all of these capabilities continue to evolve. And with that, we'll go over to Hugo for details around the samples.
Awesome. Thanks, Patrick. Standing in for Hugo today is David.
You're not
He's having
Hugo.
audio trouble. I'm not Hugo, although people mistake us, so I'll just pretend I'm Hugo. Yeah, we have some updates and new samples for SPFx Web parts, room chat by João Mendes. So really cool opportunity to do some room chat within SharePoint there. Really cool. You can check that out, as well as a Page Navigator web part by JC Wiggenbert. So we appreciate all of the samples that are being provided to us. We know it's kind of slow right now with summer, but we anticipate seeing a lot more, and we appreciate all the samples that were contributed. Same for ACES. It's been a bit of a slower summer, and so we have no new samples for the ACES repository, but they are open for business. So don't hesitate. We know we've got some updates in there that are waiting to be processed, and we will get those processed momentarily. So we appreciate everyone for all of your samples and contributions. And Patrick, back to you.
Well, David, I'm going to throw it right back to you for our optional picture time.
Yeah, wasn't sure how you wanted to transition that. So
well, we'll do it that way. So if you want to turn your cameras on, we got the optional picture time here in Together mode. David's going to take over the presentation, I believe, and
yep. So you got a moment to throw those cameras open. Say hello to the community.
Throw those cameras open and throw your hands in the air,
like you just don't care.
Well, that part's implied.
All right, everybody. Wave to the community. Say hello. We're missing Seb doing his little bobblehead dance, but we'll emulate for him. So awesome. Looks great. Got it captured. Feel free to take it back, Patrick.
All right. I think the next step here is to start the demos, which I think I'm doing the first demo. So let's see if I remember how to do demos. So what I want to talk to you all about today is something I am really excited about. So this is something we've been working with the feature teams inside SharePoint Engineering to do something pretty new. This is the first time I'm aware of the OneDrive and SharePoint group doing something like this. So we have a new capability that has GA'd, and this is a file picker V8. So this is the same file picker we use within the service itself. So we are now sharing our component or control code, however you want to think about it, with third-party developers. So you can use in your applications, whether in SharePoint Framework, whether in a SPA single-page application, whether in a remote SaaS application, you can use this new file picker in your application to open files, documents, from SharePoint or OneDrive. So you can target either place, and I'm really excited about it. The team believed in kind of the scenarios we explained to them, and the real big benefit of this is because it's part of the service, it cannot really be left behind and never updated. So as we add new capabilities to the service, we will be adding new capabilities to this control. It'll kind of flow that way. So this control may not ever necessarily be an exact one-to-one match. There might be certain flags or capabilities that don't work for third parties, but overall, it's very capable and does a ton of great stuff for you, and again, should save you a whole lot of time. And you might be familiar, there was an old version 7, not old, it was the current one until just a few weeks ago for the 7.2 picker. That's the older version. They are completely different in how they work, I'll be honest with you. So migrating is just a new integration. There isn't really a migration path between the two, but it's very much a better experience now and much more tied into the service. So this file picker, so let's talk about kind of how it is and what it works. So it is a page that lives in our service. It's an ASPX page, and you communicate with it through post messages. So messaging with it through a page. So this is the documentation here. So that link will take you to this documentation I'm looking at here, which walks through setting up an AAD app, and then it talks about how it works. So there's a page for the file picker, talks about setting up the post and message ports, initiating the picker. Then we got a bunch of sample code here in this article. But as well, we also have a bunch of sample code in GitHub now for this picker. And so we have a bunch of samples, and some of these I'm going to walk through here today, but should be a way to get you started no matter the environment you're trying to build in. So just JavaScript, TypeScript, C#, with or without an SDK. You want to do it in React. It works everywhere we've tried it. So really encourage folks to check this out. And with that, I do want to sort of start to talk about how this is all set up and works, right? Let's look at some code. So I have a OneDrive here. It's a very exciting OneDrive. It's got some files in it. That's really neat, some files and folders. Love that. I also have, I'm not going to spend a bunch of time in Azure Active Directory. I have an app set up. You've all seen this before, but I just want to touch on the permissions real quick. Is files.read-write-all, and for SharePoint, myfiles.read. And so I've got those permissions consented on this application. So good stuff. This is my OneDrive again, just to sort of show you that. And then we want to go ahead and, so this is the JavaScript basic sample. And I want to start with this because it has no dependencies other than MSOL, and it has no tricky code to it. So it's very much a straight, just you can see it's all here in this HTML page. So it's very straightforward sample, and I think it's a great place to start and kind of talk through how to interact with the picker. And because some of the other samples kind of obfuscate or abstract away a little bit of this, but I think this is a great way to sort of step through this. So you can see here we're loading the MSOL browser. We do have a little auth script here that just does some MSOL plumbing for us. Nothing fancy there, but setting some client IDs and redirect URLs and the authority and stuff like that in this sample. But so now, the first thing of note here is this param section. Let me zoom in a little bit. Zoom in. So hopefully that's okay for folks. Somebody in the chat tell me if it is not. These params here are all documented in the documentation. So you don't think you have to memorize this. All of these things are explained in here. But I'll just broadly say, you always say SDK 8.0. That's a fixed value right now. That may change. There might be an 8.1 or something like that. But right now, fixed 8.0. And then you've got this entry node that tells you where you want to start. This could be OneDrive or it could be SharePoint. It cannot be both. So you pick one, OneDrive or SharePoint, and files. This isn't strictly needed, but this is being a little more explicit. You include this authentication node. It explains why in the documentation, but it tells the picker control itself that, hey, we're ready to give you tokens. We have a way to give you tokens. And then you have some messaging stuff here. So you want to set up the origin, which in our case is just localhost 3000, and a channel ID. And that's the actual post messaging channel that will get set up to manage the communications between your application and the picker. I see a bunch of questions in the chat. I'm not going to be able to answer them right now. Let me get through a couple of this and we'll come back to those questions, okay? But I'm not ignoring them. And then you've got in here some settings around types and sources. So we want to pick files, and we want to pick OneDrive, and we also want to show our recent pivots. So that's something in the left-hand menu there. So then we've got just some JavaScript code. You all have seen JavaScript code, I believe, before, but here is some now. So we've got a launch picker function, and that launch picker function, is just bound to this button. You'll see the button here in a second. I believe we've all seen buttons before. And so we're just doing, we're creating a window, opening that window. The picker can be embedded in an iframe, or it can be embedded, or not really embedded, but shown in a pop-up. It works either way. And we have samples in that gallery or in that repository that show both approaches. But we need a window, and because we're going to load this URL, we get a token using UMSOL. Great, we've all gotten tokens. We also create a query string. Now, the query string for the file picker, and you'll see this in all of the various samples, is a JSON stringification of these parameters. So this is how you configure and control the picker. So you're going to load this window with a query string of these stringified parameters, and that is how the picker is going to get initialized. It's going to pull those params into it and do it some initialization work, there. And then you're going to create a form and actually do a post to that URL with the query string and everything. And this includes your access token, it includes the params and the query string, and then you submit that form, page will reload, you're gonna get your picker. Now, we're gonna set up some messaging. So the way you do that, and window.add event listener for messages. We're going to get some event source and doing just a little bit of checking there to make sure, because there can be other messages. So we're making sure it's our message. And then if it is our message, what we want to do is make sure it's the right channel ID and everything. and then we're going to go ahead and get ourselves a port, and we're going to add a listener to that port, and then start up that port, and then post a message back to the picker and tell it to activate. And so that's going to go ahead and activate the picker and start it all up. And then the only other real piece of code to have a look at is that message listener that we attached to that port. So you see we're adding a message listener to that port. This is that message listener. So this is all, again, in the documentation. Don't worry, if it initially looks a little confusing, it should be all covered in the documentation as well. You can always ask us questions in the issues list. But so you get a couple different kinds of messages back from the picker. You've got notification type messages. And so messages have a type, and the type of notification is just that. It's a notification. You could ignore it. You could log it. You could show it to the user. It's up to you. But they're just notifications. You're also going to have command messages. So every command message, you have to acknowledge it. And that is just posting a message back to the port with the type of acknowledge and the ID that we just got. So we were essentially telling the picker, hey, you sent us message number 1. We got message number 1. We're going to start working on that. And then we get some data from that message, and we're going to look at the command of that message. And so this is another string value. So a command, there's several different commands you have to worry about. So I'm going to skip authenticate for just 1 second because it's easier to look first. Like one command is close. That means if they've clicked the cancel button in the pop-up window, right? The next thing is pick. This means, hey, they've picked something in me, and I'm giving you some information about that. And you can see us updating the inner HTML. We'll show that in just 1 second. I'm gonna run npm start in the background here, and then as well, we've got a default, which is our unsupported command. And then authenticate is the interesting one. So the way the picker works is every time you go to hit a resource, whatever that resource might be for the picker, it's going to ask you for a token. And that token may be one you already have. So MSOL will just give that back to you, and that's great. It might be a new token for a different kind of resource. But then you get that token and you send it back to the picker, and the picker itself allows you to manage these tokens. It doesn't do anything. It's not hidden away. And this at first might seem like, oh, I wish the picker would just do this for me. But the real advantage here is you can now do authentication how you want to do it. So you might already be doing authentication in your application. You just plug it into the picker. You might want to use, if you're in SharePoint Framework, you might want to use the token provider. I'm sorry, I forget the exact name for it. And that would work great. There's a sample that shows that. So you might not have to use MSOL. There might be other options for you to get these tokens and use these tokens. But this allows you complete flexibility to control how these tokens are generated, how they're managed, and then how you send them back to the picker is just through another post message command with a result. This is a result of the authenticate thing. For all these results, you're going to include the original message ID that started this chain, and that is the data block of it, which the result is a token, and the actual token value is a token. So we'll send that back to the picker. Hey, that's great, Patrick. Let's see this run. Cool. So we're going to go to our great website here. You can see there's a button here. And if I hit that button, I'm going to launch the picker. You saw a little MSOL thing happen. And whoa, I can pick files out of this OneDrive. So we see the OneDrive over here. Neat. And now if I've lost my picker. So if I look at the picker, I can now pick those files. So if I pick this one, and you can see in this one, just real quick note, I can only pick one file at a time. That's a setting I can control. If I hit cancel, that's that close command I showed you before. If I launch that picker again, and I pick one of these guys, let's look at what we get back. We get back a great amount of data here. So this is our command is pick. And if we go look back at our code and look at, this is where we see our command was pick, and this is what we're doing. So we're just updating the inner HTML, and we have to tell the picker that we had a result of success, that, hey, we got that pick thing. That's awesome. And then in this sample, I've chosen to close that window. That's optional. You wouldn't have to do that. For example, if you were running inside an iframe, you could not close it. You could just leave it open and let them pick files, and stuff could happen. Lots of different scenarios you can support through this control. But bouncing back to this page, I, of course, make the best user interfaces in the world, but you get an array of items. So this is sort of indicating you could have multiple items here. But I get a name of that document, document.docx. I get web-dav URLs, web URLs. I get its size. I get IDs. I get a parent reference. So this is great. So you can now access this file through Microsoft Graph, which would be the best way to access files in OneDrive and SharePoint is through the Graph. So encourage you to take that path. But as well, if you need to work or it's easier for your application to work in SharePoint, here's a set of SharePoint IDs that will get you, to that thing. You've got list item IDs, web IDs, site IDs, the site URL, all this stuff you might need, as well as then some of these kind of meta values of an embed URL, list URL, and so forth. So really neat stuff. And that's, hey, that's super cool, right? But what can we do with that? Like, how else can we use that? How might we use this information to build an application? Well, the next thing I want to show you is I'm going to hop around just a tiny bit because it's a 2-presenter day and I've got some time. So we're going to kill this server and we're going to go back up to all our samples. Here you can see all the samples. These are just the ones from the GitHub. And the next thing I want to do is look at this TypeScript SDK sample. And what this does is I'm going to also, I'm going to do code there, and then I'm going to do npm start there while that's getting spun up. So this sample is using an HTML page. And then it's using this bundle thing. So this is actually doing a little bit of Webpack stuff, showing you how that might work, and then doing it in TypeScript to show you, that step. And as well, it uses this Picker API SDK. This is not published. This is a thing that is internal to the sample gallery right now. We are not sure if or who might produce an actual SDK for this Picker. We're in discussions for that right now. But we have 2 sample SDKs I'll show you in just a second that you can use as examples to help build your applications. So check that out when you have a chance. But this is just one way of doing it. There's no requirement, as you saw in the first thing, of using any SDK. You can use this absolutely just raw TypeScript, raw JavaScript, do it in React, lots of different ways to do this. So no SDK is required. This is simply showing you, hey, here is a way to do it with an SDK. So we've got some stuff here that's just plumbing to set up our page. Here is, again, our parameters or our options that we're going to pass to the picker to initialize it. You can see here my selection mode is multiple, and I have a max count of 5. So what that now, previously you saw I could only pick one item. Now I could pick multiple up to 5. I've got my other pivots here. And again, this is the stuff we talked about, entry into OneDrive. You can see I didn't include the files node underneath it. It's not necessary for OneDrive. And then I've got the rest of this is all more or less the same, except this is just using the picker through that SDK. But that SDK just surfaces the process that we've all seen before. So let's go to our page again. And whoa, that's not right. I'm going to refresh this. And remarkably, this sample looks a lot like our other sample, except now I could pick multiple of these. So this is just sort of showing you, and you can see here, got multiple results. So same sample visually, but different code. So just try to present different ways to do this that might help you if you happen to want to approach it in a different way. And then the last thing I want to show you is a TypeScript React sample, because a lot of folks are working in React. And so I'm going to do a code of this one. Sorry, I'm closing some other windows. Code of that, and then I'm going to run npm start in this. And so in here, we are using that same other sample SDK, but we're doing all this in React now. So we've got that's going to get started and not work. So just one second. So we've got let's get to like the app.tsx. So this was just created with Create React app. So nothing too fancy in that regard. It's not like the greatest, bestest React app in the world. It's just a boilerplate React app with just a little bit of stuff added into it just to demonstrate what we're doing with the picker. So you can see here, again, this common theme of setting up our options for the picker. Note a couple of things here. Now I've got some filters. I'm filtering on docx files, right? That's neat. I could also still pick multiple of those. That's cool, but I haven't set a max, right? So I could pick 1,000. I don't know what your application would do with that, but it's possible. But I could pick multiple. I've got filters now, though. I think it's neat. It's another capability you can have there. And again, you see our entries being OneDrive. I'm showing all this stuff in OneDrive just because I think it's a little clearer than hopping back between SharePoint and OneDrive. But functionally, it's exactly the same experience. You would set up the entry information, and we have samples for that, as well as documentation that covers that. But so that's really the only difference, is setting up that entry information. And then just this is some React stuff, right? This is here's our onPicked function. We're going to set results. This is use state. So I think this is probably fairly familiar to a lot of you, but encourage you to try it out. And so, looking, this is just some React stuff, right? But here's our picker button. So instead of just having a button, now we've got a React component that's a button. What's more exciting about that? So if we go look at our picker button, where's our picker button? Go to definition. It's this thing right here. So no, it's not. Where's our picker button? Boy, oh boy, picker. Yeah, so here is the actual button, right? But we have then inside this component, this is a way to do it. Again, not necessarily the way to do it. Lots of ways to do it. But the way I've done it here is we got some props that have a base URL, a token, generation function, and the options, right? That function is the same thing we've seen a couple times before. We're just getting tokens. Then we've got some other use state stuff about setting the window and managing the picker. And so you can kind of see in here, we've got some use effect stuff happening. So if we have a picker, we're going to set up our notification and our logging and our error handlers. And then as well, we're going to run a quick async activate. So that SDK thing has an activate method that takes a base URL, those options, and then we're just going to say on results, use those items. So the way this picker is working in this sample is it's going to await you to pick some stuff or close that window, and then it's going to pass those results to our on results function, and which is coming from the props. So we have the on results coming from the props. And we've got use effect. This is setting up the content window. So setting the picker, using, and this SDK is built on the PnP JS v3 timeline. So you see the idea of using behaviors here. And this was this sample was a little bit of an experiment for me if the timeline was extensible to work for non-SharePoint and REST request stuff, and it was. So great. And then we've got our click thing, and then we set our content window, we create a new window and open it, and that's great. And then we show our stuff. And why this sample is neat, and we're going to go back to our trusty localhost 3000. Hey, our button's in the middle now. That's new and different and cool. We're going to click it. We're going to get the same picker. Note a couple of things. Same picker, but we filtered just on docx. I could pick multiple of these things, and then I can hit select. I can hit cancel. That works. Oh, whoops. Okay, that's a little bit of a bug. We'll deal with that later. Never hit cancel when you really should hit select. So we're going to hit select. And now what we're doing in the React sample specifically is showing some, because the next logical question, right, is, hey, I've got a file reference through that picker data you saw, those JSON blobs. Cool. What can I do with it? So this React sample starts to answer that question. So you can see I've got the thumbnail previews here. I could click this button. And I could preview the file using the embed link. This is interesting. We have an online services art. And so here's just some great text I wrote. It's a really interesting story. We don't need to read it now. I could also copy a link. Let's put a link to that document in my clipboard. So I can go there. That's going to open it actually in the Word app, not just the embed kind of preview. I can download that file. That's going to do whatever your your local configuration to do with the downloaded Word file is. Mine is open it, and I can also delete those files. It actually deletes those files, so I'm not going to click that because I've got 2 sample Word docs in there. I don't really need to delete one of them. But how's that code work? So it's actually really simple. So we have this files list thing, and this is the React for it that makes it all work. So it just takes these different things you can do with files and sort of makes this little table of them here, and you can do a thumbnail with that item and so forth. But interestingly, like if we look at the copy link stuff, it's pretty simple code. Once we've got the item, we can use the web URL here, and just we're writing that to the clipboard on that button click. So that's copying a link, right? Deleting is just, hey, we're going to make a request to the graph. So using drives, that parent reference drive ID, items, item ID, and we're going to delete it. So, nice and easy. Once we have that item ref, it's super easy to get going. And then as well, we got download, and then we've got preview, and all of these, you can check them out on how that works. And then thumbnail, it just is a little more complicated because we've got to get the references and stuff and then actually set that thumbnail value. So making a request and then setting some stuff to show it. So great stuff there. So I just want to close and get stuff moved over to Paolo by just encourage all of you to, where did my docs go? Check out the new file picker. It is, I think, a really amazing capability, and it's a really amazing the team worked with us to allow this to be available for third-party developers. So I encourage you to check it out. This is the first in what we are hopeful will be a number of controls along these lines, and we've got some stuff hopefully in the pipeline that we can announce soon. But just wanted to say thank you all for the time, and we'll hand things now over to Paolo.
Yes. Thank you, Patrick. I'm going to share my screen and move to the next demo.
I hope I've left you enough time.
Yeah, you did. No worries. I was just laughing at the chat. No worries. So now we have to talk about how we can customize forms for items in lists and libraries using SharePoint framework. And what I want to talk with you about is a new capability that Microsoft introduced in SharePoint Framework 1.15. I would say finally, because we were looking for it since a long time ago. We can now use SharePoint Framework to create custom forms for adding, editing, or displaying items in lists and libraries. When we create such extensions, we can configure the extensions to render just one of those or one or more of those forms. So for example, you can create an extension which will just customize the edit and new experience, but you don't necessarily need to customize the display experience or the other way around. Because when you register your extension, you can choose what kind of page type you want to customize. And you have a nice enumeration. You can configure the view, the edit, and the new page type. And what is really cool, in my opinion, is that this new functionality works with lists, libraries, and document sets inside libraries, which I really love. It works really well also together with the dynamic form control that we have in the PnP React reusable controls. And it makes really easy and simple to create a custom form in literally a matter of minutes. In my opinion, this is a really useful functionality, especially for enterprise-level solutions where customers want to have additional level of control of the fields in the UI, or they want to bind some of the fields to external APIs, REST APIs, or stuff like that. And they eventually don't want to rely on power-ups to create the UI, but they want to have a completely customizable solution built with SPFx. Whenever you create such kind of form customizers, you have then to deploy them. And again, in the deployment process, you can choose where you want to apply those custom forms. So you can use the something form client-side component ID for the content type, and you can target the new, the display, and the edit form. And you can configure, for example, the display form client-side component ID property of a content type, or you can configure display form client-side component properties property of a content type to configure some custom settings for that custom form. You can do that, as I said, for the new display and edit form independently, and you can then save the settings of the content type and make it happen for real. Nowadays, you can use or you can easily use the client-side object model and PHP PowerShell to configure those properties on a content type. And in the near future, I'm saying near because we are working on it. In the near future, it will be possible to export and import through the PnP provisioning engine these settings, so that if you are creating a custom solution, you are an ISV or whatever else, and you are building your own solution and you want to do PnP provisioning of that solution, including the custom forms, you will be able to do that using the provisioning engine. So that said, and now that we are all on the same page, let me switch to the demo, and let me show you how you can create such kind of extensions and what you can do to develop your custom forms. So I'm going to switch to, first of all, the command prompt, just to show you how the human generator for SharePoint will let us create a custom form customizer. So here, just for the sake of simplicity, I have already executed the human generator for SharePoint in a completely random folder, and I'm going to create a solution which will have this nice name. Now, when you have to select what kind of component you want to create, you can select to create an extension. And now, in SharePoint Framework 1.15, you can select to create a form customizer, which is the new extension that we have. By selecting this one, you will have to provide a name, whatever you like, because I don't really care about this one, which will be just dropped into the trash right after I will execute it, but just to show you the UI. And then you can choose if you want to use no framework or if you want to use React, as it happens for most of the components that we create using SharePoint Framework. I already did it for another really basic form customizer, which is the one I'm going to show you right now. This is what you will get out of the box when you run the human generator. And then we will move to a real demo where I will show you a real form working in a list or in a library or on a document set. So when you generate a form customizer, what you get back in the SRC folder, in the extension subfolder, will be a form customizer class, which will inherit or extend the base form customizer type provided by SharePoint Framework, and you can configure a set of custom properties to customize the behavior of your form customizer. Here, like always, you can define whatever properties you like, and you will be able to configure those properties when deploying your form customizer. Once you have done that, aside from the initialization code, in which you can eventually initialize stuff and do whatever you need to do in order to prepare your extension, you have the render method. And in the render method, if you use the React component, you can simply rely on a React component which will do the actual rendering of your form. What is important to know is that whenever you create a form customizer, you have to take care of a couple of actions. When the user will click on the Save button, if the user wants to create a new item or to update an existing item which is in the edit form, or the user can also click the Cancel button, which will simply close the form without saving the updates or the changes to the item. So you have in the form customizer, you see this .form saved method and form closed method. These two methods will report back to the SharePoint online infrastructure and will save or simply skip the saving of the item, and will tell the backend infrastructure to go back to the list to show the list of items by closing the actual form customizer. So, for example, in this really basic sample, we have a React component. This is the one just automatically generated by the scaffolding tool. In the React component, we simply have the render method of the React component, and here we can do whatever we like. So You can build your fully customized UI using your own React components. You can rely on the PnP controls. You can use, as I told you before, the dynamic form control. And the only important information that you need to know is that you will have, through the context of SharePoint framework, access to the item and to the list ID so that you can target the specific item you want to use and you want to edit, display, or if it will be a new item that you are going to add, of course, you will not have the item ID, but you will still have the list ID. So now that I showed you the basic automatically generated one, let me switch to a real one and let me show, first of all, the form customizer in action. So let me go to my browser, and here we have a demo list, which I already configured to have a customized form. So, for example, if I will select this item, or either way this one, I will see in the UI, not the out-of-the-box form, but a custom one, which I've built using SharePoint Framework. As you can see here now, I'm using the edit form, so I can change the values of this item. I can change, for example, the taxonomy and go to, I don't know, SharePoint Online and save it. And I will go back to the list of items and my item will be updated. I can add a new item and still I will be able to see my custom form because I decided to associate my form to all of the flavors available, just to show you the power of this new capability. So this will be the Viva SIG call, and the item will be 100, and just because I called it the Viva one, I will select Microsoft Viva as the taxonomy field. I can save it, and I will have my new item available. So really simple and straightforward, and I can use it to build the custom UI of a form for my items using a SharePoint framework. How did I build this customizer? As before, I used the human generator to build the initial scaffolding. But then in my custom form customizer, I decided to rely on my React component using the dynamic form that we have in the PnP React controls family. So you need to add to the packages of your solution the @PnP SPFx controls React in order to being able to use this component. And then in the demo TSX React component, which I use under the cover of the rendering of my form customizer, I simply need to do one thing, which is amazing if you think about that. I simply need to refer to the dynamic form component, which is defined in PnP React controls. Simple as that. And the dynamic form component will require to have the context, the list ID, and the list item ID for the item that you want to edit or to display. And you have the capability to define some custom events on the dynamic form so that, for example, when the user will click on the cancel button, you will have a custom event. When the user will click on the save button, you will have a before submit where you can do eventually some custom validation logic. And then you can say, okay, all good, I don't want to cancel the submission. Or you can say true, cancel the submission. You can intercept any submission error, if any, as I said, or you can have the event on submitted, which means that the item got saved on the target list, and you can just notify the backend infrastructure that you are done. And just for the sake of completeness, in my demo form customizer, when I create the React component, I provide the onSave and the onClose events, relying on the corresponding methods in my form customizer. So here on save, I will notify to the SharePoint Framework form customizer infrastructure that the user saved the item. On close, of course, I will notify that the user just closed without saving, so that on the actual dynamic form, when the user will say, okay, oops, go away, okay, on canceled, oh, come on canceled, I will rely on the on close method defined in the properties of my React component. And the same applies for the onSubmitted, where I rely on the onSave property, which maps to my save method. You see here in the properties, I define those two methods. So really, really simple again, and mainly because we have this wonderful control, the dynamic form control, which makes our life really, really easy. Now, what if we want to debug, to test this form customizer? In every form customizer solution, we have the manifest JSON, as we do for any other component in SharePoint framework, and we have the ID of the component. This is the information we need to provide whenever we want to configure our form customizer onto a target content type. And if we want to debug it locally within Visual Studio Code, we can just rely on the serve.json file. And here we can configure as many configuration sections as we like. So, for example, we have a default one, but we can configure as many as we like. And here I configured my form customizer. Here you can recognize the component ID that I showed you before. And I say for every single flavor of page type, so for the new form, for the edit form, and for the view form or display form, you notice the different page type here. We configure that we want to use our custom component for this specific list. And this will be the URL that we want to activate in the browser when we want to debug our form customizer. And we can eventually provide the custom properties which will be used by the form customizer in order to run it. And we can also specify the item that we want to retrieve from the target list whenever we do the debug of the solution and we want to test it. How can we play with it? Well, we simply need to do gulp serve --config, and we provide the name of the configuration, or if we will do just gulp serve, we will fall back to the default one. So let's say that we want to play with the configuration to actually, let me move from the list to the library. I have a library in my site. Let me show you. I have this demo library in which I have one document. I can start the new form or the edit form, for example, for this library. As you can see, this is the root folder of my library. This will be the configuration that I'm going to use. I will run gulp serve with this configuration, and it will start this page and let me debug my component targeting that library and that item. Oops, not what I was looking for. Gulp serve is better than server, sorry, typo. Okay. I don't know, I always make this mistake. I don't know if you do the same, but I always do that. Server, my fault. Okay, so when you run it in debug, you have to accept that you want to load the debug scripts. So you click on load debug scripts. It will take a while. And after a bit of a wait, we will be able to see our form running and editing the item with ID number 1 in the target library, hopefully. Okay, it is loading now, taking longer than expected, but it will work. Last word, famous words. No, it should, just a matter of waiting. And as soon as it will be ready, we will see the dynamic form loading, and we will see all of the fields rendering in the UI of our custom page. And you can do that for, as I said, a list item, a document, or a document set. This is actually taking quite long, but I'm pretty sure it will do its magic. I'm confident. We can eventually try to refresh the page just for the sake of warming it up a bit. And drums. Okay, let's wait a bit more, but I want to show you the output. So I'm really wondering why it is taking so long now, but we are in the bug, so there could be reasons. Let me double check on this side if something is happening. No, just working on it, so it should be good to go. As soon as it will show up, you will be able to see the form. Okay, most of us believe it will work. Yes, but you know, I don't believe myself. So, Okay, so let's wait a bit. And in the meantime, I just want to show you that from a document set point of view, it is exactly the same story as before. And while it is loading, and I really don't know why it is taking so long, I want to show you a little piece of PowerShell script that I used to register my solution. So when you are done with the debugging, and then we will go back to the form, and you are ready to release your solution, as any other SharePoint framework solution, you will simply need to package the solution and deploy it in the app catalog. And using PowerShell, you connect to the target site, and you get the target content type you are targeting. And then you can simply configure the display form, client-side, component ID, and eventually the properties. And the same applies for the new and for the edit form. You update the content type, you invoke PnP query, and you are done. You have your custom form configured for your target content type in your target list and library. So that said, let me go back briefly here and just to share with you a couple of links, including the source code of the sample that I showed you. And that said, I think that's all for me. So back to you, Patrick.
Great stuff, Paolo. Thank you so much for that. Wonderful demo as always, Paolo. So I want to thank, Paolo for doing a great demo today on creating custom list forms with SPFx. It's a fantastic new capability in SPFx 1.15. And thank you to me for doing a demo on OneDrive File Picker V8. Encourage you to try that, give it a chance in your solutions, and then give us feedback on that. Would love to hear from you. So thank you to both of our demos today. It's weird because my brain just kind of does the same script every time, but great stuff. And if you'd like to do a demo, please submit for us as well. Thank you, all of you, for attending our call. Recording will be available in about 24 hours on our YouTube channel. You can follow us there on Twitter. Our next call will be in 2 weeks on August 11th, and our next general dev call will be next week, August 4th at the same time. You can get all the calls there at aka.ms/m365/calls. I want to say thank you to all of you for joining us today. Have a great rest of your week, and we'll talk soon. Bye-bye.